I spent many years walking in the East End of London, which is, again, the Dickensian east side of London, where the really poor live, because they all live in West Kensington and Chelsea, the really rich ones. So London is a division in a way. And I always chose, I never wandered around Chelsea photographing, for instance. I mean, recently, within the last couple of years, I went to Royal Ascot, a place I've never been to, where you really do see the privilege. But even that's being slightly tarnished now, because people who are getting in there are not totally from Chelsea or Berkshire or somewhere. But I always preferred to roam around the back streets of East London, east of Aldgate. There would be a populace of people on all street corners lying on the floor, begging for money, begging for a cup of tea. I mean, photographically, it was a fruit salad. You could not miss. If I'd have closed my eyes and put the camera to my face and clicked the button, I would have walked away with an amazing image. On the other hand, that sounds very conceited of me to say that, contemptuous and foolish. But nobody exercised that privilege of walking around with the camera with greater concern and respect. I used to approach those people very carefully and try to seek out their consent to take pictures. They're not going to say, "Hey, you take my picture." They're not going to say that, are they? But I would gauge by my eyes. I'd look at them and they'd look at me. Occasionally I could feel hostility. I got up week after week after week when I worked on the Sunday Times and drove my car into London, because I lived in the countryside. I drove my car and parked it about a mile away from the East End. You could in those days because there was no parking meters. And then I'd put an old overcoat on and I'd walk to the centre of where this world existed in Aldgate in London, with one of my Nikon Fs under my old overcoat and my Dr. Martens boots. I couldn't have been more happy, because I was walking towards the challenge. I used to crisscross and walk the area all day long, all day in the coldest of days. And sooner or later, I would turn the corner and there would be an image. The streets of our society are full of food, creatively, if you want for the better word. You can go in the streets, it's yours. That is what was so compelling for me about photography. Some days it didn't work. Some days I'd go there, I'd drive 30 miles into London, walk all day long, freezing cold, go back in my car to Hertfordshire and not have a decent roll of film, decent picture. But it's like a man who sits by a river fishing. Doesn't mean to say you've got to catch fish. Those experiences didn't mean I should have been rewarded for walking around all day. I already was rewarded by just being there, learning about humanity. The whole thing was, one of the things I always thought about photography, because I wasn't very bright as a young man, because I didn't have this education, having left school at 15, was that the great thing about photography, you can hide, not so much behind the camera, but you can hide from really having to come up with any kind of special reasons, because I wasn't, I thought, as long as I've got the camera, I can hide behind it. I can do landscapes. No one's going to ask me any serious questions. Wasn't I wrong? And also, it wasn't political. Wasn't I wrong again? Because everything I've ever done in my life has been political. And I do have the answers to some of those things I was afraid of in the old days, because I was there. I saw it with my own eyes. Nobody can tell me what to say, whether it was true or false, because I was there. I not only recorded it, but I saw it.